Like, you're finding out that there's all the Secret Service element. There has been, poisonings with, is it Novichok or something? Or I can't remember what it's called, but this, invisible poison. And you're a relatively young man with young kids. You're in London. You're pretty exposed. Like, how were you feeling during that time?
I mean, it did start to get quite scary. I mean, let's just say I didn't stand near the edge of any tube
platforms. Do you know what? In the documentary, it shows you, I think, going to the tube. I was like, I hope he doesn't stand near the edge. Yeah.
And it's a weird thing to have enemies. And, as a journalist, you tend to assume that you get some kind of invulnerability because, the police care a lot more about someone getting their legs broken than they do about esoteric financial crimes. That would get their attention. So you kind of assume everything will be fine. But as it got madder and madder, and so we reached this point where I'm being investigated by the German government for being corrupt. And the FT feels that to clear the air, it has to announce that it's going to launch its own internal investigation. And I think I was sitting in this exact spot. I'm in my home office here up in St Albans, and I got a call from the editor telling me that this was going to happen, and it was for the good of the paper, and he had complete faith, but we've got to go through the process to show it. And I had that strange experience of his voice coming from like a whole long distance away, and even though intellectually I knew this was a sensible thing that we should be doing, emotionally total turmoil. It's like, oh shit, they might get away with this. And I think underlying that was the sense that, I was kind of losing that invulnerability. Because at that point, if anything happened, well, there's an awful lot of smoke around this guy.
Yeah.
And so I think that was
I know you can rationalize it intelligently, but did you feel that the FT may be moving away from you? Like this?
Yeah, I felt at that moment, I felt very isolated.
Yeah.
And that this was maybe getting out of hand.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that when I'm reading it, and I was like, you must have felt, because you're trying to do the right thing here. You're trying to expose this situation, and it's all turning on you. And I wanted to talk about the German authorities. So, they end up completely siding with Wirecard. They ban short selling, and then they open a case on you. Is that right?
Yeah. They and I think it's interesting, the behavior here, because you have the regulator confronted with evidence that something's gone horribly wrong at this company, and they then go to the regulator with this story that I've leaked it to short sellers.
Yeah. And
the regulator seems much more ready to accept the idea that this big German company is being attacked by malign actors overseas than it is to question.
It's not like a major institution is suddenly taking a
and I think there's a whole bunch of things at play, part of which is just sort of institutional psychology, in that they had investigated people who attacked Wirecard in the past, and so it made sense to do it again. Otherwise you sort of call into question your past behavior. And I think it's also that, you look around the room and that you're reassured by all the people who think Wirecard are great, like the lawyers, the bankers, the investors.
The people.
And you think, surely this couldn't be a fraud.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, what still baffles me really is what persuaded them to say, oh yeah, we need to ban short selling in this company to protect the German economy, to quote the press release, which explained it.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, it is, it is baffling from, from a standard point of view, but then you have all that, darker element, the gangster element, and you wonder, was that at play at all, or is there any information on that, or somebody being leaned on to take their side, not your side, or
that's one of the great unanswered questions. Wirecard, had some good lobbying heft. There's a moment where sort of Angela Merkel brings them up with the Chinese over some deal to do. So they clearly had some connections at a high level. I mean, I have had conversations with various people who were at quite high levels during that thing, and incompetence does explain a lot. Certainly at the Baffin level.
Yeah.
But none of these are entirely satisfying, and you do come back to the idea, like, they were very much prepared to pay us, or pay Murphy, $10 million. They sounded very serious about that, and that kind of begs the question, who can't you buy?
Yeah.
$10 million, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so that takes us all to this point. So you're isolated. FT is doing an investigation into all your work, everything you've done, every conversation you've had. I've been through audits, in a corporate environment, and it's pretty rigorous. So I can't imagine what this is like. But and then also you have Baffin, you have everyone, you have this kind of, there's people roaming London trying to do things and find things out, and so you're right in that kind of clutch position. But then how does it kind of resolve and then progress?
So two things happen, really. One is, we get this sort of internal investigation out of the way. And our editor is quite annoyed at this point because he's had to spend a lot of money on lawyers. And he basically says to us, I want a story which is going to kill them. We've been sort of going backwards and forwards for 6 months going, why aren't our stories working? Why aren't we persuading people? And by this point, I had sort of got to the heart of the fraud. I was confident that I could prove that they were just making it up. And
at this point, because there's one point where people had gone to these kind of shell companies in Singapore and Philippines. Had that happened yet, or?
Yeah, so what happens is we start publishing stories based on this, what the lawyer in Singapore had told us, and sort of this cache of documents that he gave us. And it's a bit like peeling an onion. To begin with, it was just trying to work out, well, what were these guys up to in the Singapore office? And why were they doing it? Because it was all lots of little frauds. It was like $30 million of fake contracts initially. But then the key to it was sort of going deeper into the documents. I began to realize that the big secret at the heart of Wirecard's business was they had these partners. And that argument I talked about, is it money laundering? Is it gambling? Well, money laundering was this cover story internally. So they had this business where they said, yeah, any payments which are too hot for us to handle, we'll send to our friends. They'll deal with it all and send us back a nice big commission. And we started to investigate these partners. And so we went to visit one in the Philippines, in Dubai, in Ireland, and we quickly realized that there was nothing there. And I sort of found this file of, that they're given to their auditors of like, here's all the business that we're doing. And I started going through it and
expecting to find a lot of dirty money.
Yeah, well, we were expecting,
nothing.
So we thought this is maybe the gangsters that we'll find.
Yeah.
This is the heart of the business. It was fabulously profitable. And they were doing huge amounts of supposed like money laundering style business. But then when we go and knock on the door, so in the Philippines, my colleague Stefania goes there. And, we don't know what we're going to find. Is it going to be gangsters? So we don't send her alone. She goes with a fixer, a photographer. And she knocks on the door and she gets invited into this courtyard where the first thing she sees is a poodle on a poodle on a table. And there are two men there giving it a haircut. And there's this confused family who are like, what on earth are you talking about?
Yeah.
And there's no sign of any international payments processing. And that was like the first real concrete evidence that we had that, aha, okay, they're just making
real.
Like, none of this is real. Yeah. And so we sort of repeat that process, and then I find this sort of core spreadsheet with all their customers on it, and we start going through them and realize they just don't exist. So we write the hardest possible story we can. These are the fake customers. These are the fake sales. This is how they're doing it. And if you don't believe us, see for yourself. Here are all the underlying documents. I think we published that in October 2019. But because Wirecard is a company, it gets to investigate itself. So the police don't come and knock down the door. They just say, right, okay. Yeah, there's a lot of confusion about this. We're just going to hire a new accounting firm to come in and show that everything's real. Because nobody trusts our old one, Ernst & Young, anymore. And so KPMG come in and do this 6-month special audit. And they come out and they say, oh, yeah, we can't actually find any evidence that this business is real. But Wirecard only publishes the report in German. And then they hold this press conference where they say, KPMG has found no evidence of fraud or wrongdoing, which is they set the terms of their investigation. I mean, that's literally true, but that's only because that wasn't KPMG's job.
Yeah, that's not what they were doing.
And so the share price starts shooting up. And then, I've spoken to German guys who said, the share price is shooting up. And then he picks up the report. And it was part of this Munich crowd who had all been told, oh, it's all going to be fine. Like the local world was going, quick, buy in while it's cheap. And he said he picked up the report and started reading it. And then they all start WhatsApping each other going, have you actually read this thing? This is insane. Sell.
Right. Yeah.
And so it then, you're left with this sort of halfway house where, and a key thing is he says, and Ernst & Young have told us that they're going to sign off on the audit.
Right.
And this is sort of March, I think, April 2020, COVID's breaking out, the annual report's delayed. And that one thing EY are going to sign is enough to like help them survive a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing.
So in that period, didn't they say they were going to buy Deutsche Bank? Was that period?
Oh no, they so they didn't come out with a bid, but they were before we basically killed them with the story. They had started to develop this plan that they were going to buy Deutsche Bank.
Yeah,
and because
which would wash it all away, right?
It would wash it all away. I mean, like, $1 trillion of assets on the balance sheet. Yeah. The weird thing to remember is at this point, Wirecard was more valuable than Deutsche Bank in terms of market cap. Because Deutsche Bank was going from scandal to scandal. It could never make any money. It was all restructuring, the whole thing. So it wasn't worth very much as a entity. And so it was kind of plausible that Wirecard could buy them. And, had this all happened 6 months later, Wirecard could have been a meme stock.
Yeah.
And they could have bought Deutsche Bank, and we'd be talking about Marcus Brown, reshaping the European financial markets.
It's crazy. In my mind, that is the same timeline, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. But then EY come out, right? And
yeah, so it's sort of, they wait till the last possible day that they can release their results. And everybody is sort of sitting waiting. And we all know if they sign off the results or it's just like a partial opinion, the stock's going to the moon. It would throw like a big wet blanket over everything. But if they don't sign, it's game over. And again, it's COVID, so I'm sitting at home and we're waiting, and the stock market opens and nothing has appeared.
Yeah.
And at that point, we start to feel a bit optimistic because, bad numbers always take longer to add up than good ones.
Yeah.
And so suddenly this announcement comes out.
Conferences are being organized and all that stuff.
Yeah. And you suddenly see this announcement come across the wires. 1.9 billion euros is missing, and they haven't got the audit. And basically, in that moment, it's like victory.
Yeah.
As soon as I read that, I knew it was all over. We had won. Like the money never existed.
Yeah.
But that's the line they're going with, and it's incredible. I think it was sort of like this incredible moment of release as like all the pressure and everything just disappeared in a moment. It was brilliant.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, it's like, because that's what now, 6 years of this, and then
it's man, yeah. I mean, it's almost exactly 6 years ago.
Well, I mean, it took 6 years to get to that point.
It took 6 years to get there, and it's almost when it finally blew up was 6 years ago.
Yeah, and it's 6 years ago as well. Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's amazing. But then even it doesn't end there, right? So Marsalek just disappears.
Yeah. So the company collapses into bankruptcy. The chief executive's arrested, but this guy Marsalek is just sort of, no one's in any hurry to arrest anyone. So he just gets a cab to Vienna, jumps on a private plane, and flies to Belarus. And there he starts his sort of second career as a Russian spy master. And so there were 5-6 Bulgarians recently convicted of spying for Russia in the UK, doing some fairly nasty stuff, and spying on NATO bases, trying to get the mobile phone numbers of Ukrainian servicemen being trained in the UK, so that Russia could track them when they went back to Ukraine, presumably with the aim of killing them, and that kind of nasty stuff. And it came out in the trial that this guy Jan Marsalek was the spy master who was controlling the whole thing, and he seems to be living fairly happily in Moscow, using an identity that he has borrowed from a Russian Orthodox priest.
Okay, he's not going by Dan McCrum, no.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm conscious of time as well, but if you're okay.
Oh yeah, we've been chatting for ages.
Yeah. So, and the thing, I guess, the gangster element puts another layer on it. Typically the driving force behind these things is greed, but and Braun, I think, came out afterwards and said, "I'm a victim too. I didn't know this was happening." What do you think were the driving forces of this? Because obviously Marsalek had this other life. And actually, it almost feels like the Wirecard was secondary to his other life. So, what's your take on that?
So I think Wirecard's one of those companies which started out doing bad stuff. It was operating in the grey in terms of like money laundering, moving money for porn, gaming, that kind of thing. And then there was maybe a little bit of light accounting fraud early on. And then there's this sort of key moment in the business in sort of 2010 where suddenly all of that gaming stuff, for various reasons, just goes away. The US is cracking down. Some people walk off with some of the best business. And that's the moment, I think, where it just changes to out and out accounting fraud. And the longer you get away with it, sort of the more profitable it becomes. And, eventually it becomes a case where you just add another zero each year.
You have to keep it going,
so I think Marcus Brown is this sort of interesting, stuck-up, secretive character. It doesn't seem to have many close friends. Is always
Jobs turtleneck, which
he
frauds than it does. Jobs had it, but then Theranos,
Wirecard, and so
more damage.
And amazingly, he's still on trial.
Wow,
his trial's been going on for about 5 years now. It's insane. But they're going to find him guilty of something and then probably have to let him go quite soon because it's been going on so long.
But so was he just operating on greed, or was he wasn't connected at all?
I think it's that combination of greed and also you become trapped. There's no way out without,
revealing the.
If you're doing one of these frauds, you either have to like sell it, like autonomy, or you buy something big and then blame the collapse on that. So Slater and Gordon bought another company that was investigated by the UK fraud office, Quindell. And then when Slater and Gordon collapsed, that sort of was a convenient excuse for all the questions which people had about their accounts before it. But otherwise, at some point you run out of money. And they did steal a lot of money. This is the thing to remember. They raised about $3.5 billion from their banks.
Yeah.
And, they spent a good chunk of that creating the appearance of like a profitable business, but also $1 billion or $2 billion just went missing.
Yeah. On the private jets and the
whatever. People would people would be taking sort of those like Aldi carrier bags. People would be just taking Aldi carrier bags of cash in and out of the office.
Wow.
On a sort of weekly basis.
Yeah. In a digital payments office.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple of questions here.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, one of them is, do you think it could have gone differently if they hadn't used such dirty tactics?
Yeah, I think the thing which sunk them was accusing the FT of being corrupt. So their tactic, which worked again and again, was to blame the messenger. Attacked people who were trying to criticize them as self-interested market manipulators,
like these small short sellers and writing reports.
And if when we wrote that first story, the $30 million worth of fraud, if they just had come clean then and said, yes, you got us, well done, we might have declared victory. And it would have made it harder to write the sort of the follow-up stuff for sort of various legal related reasons. And also, we might have felt like, oh yeah, we've done that. Well done us. We did a good story. But once they said, haha, no, you're corrupt and this isn't true, it was basically the only way to clear our name was to like get to the bottom of it. So that provided both the momentum and also the institutional support to get, okay, you've got to get to the bottom of this story.
Yeah. And equally, it's a signal to you that, hang on a second, they know we're onto something, because you wouldn't react like that. Another question, what are your views on the Andrew Left verdict, or your thoughts on the role of activist short sellers who report today?
So I generally think the authorities have a bias towards prosecuting short sellers because they find them weird, and there seems to be a sort of a public suspicion of people who bet against things going well, as it were, even though they're exposing fraud or problems or evaluation, and they're a necessary part of markets. So Spain at the moment is going after Gotham City Research, who basically exposed some very questionable behavior at this big blood group, Grifols. And the Spanish regulator has slapped Grifols on the wrists, given them sort of a nominal fine, and is criminally attempting to prosecute the Gotham guys for market manipulation. So I think that's pretty outrageous, and you see it again. The German government came after us, and so I tend to think there's a bit of a bias here, and there's so much fraud going on in the US market at the moment.
Yeah, well, I'm sure.
And the regulator has basically abdicated responsibility. I think what got Andrew into trouble was he dealt a lot with retail investors, and I think I haven't followed the trial closely, but certainly some of the sort of private messages he shared didn't look good in court. And I think it was one of the things that always gets people in trouble, and we've seen this time again, it was at the heart of the dot-com boom, was people saying one thing in public and encouraging retail investors to do something, whilst in a transparently thinking the other thing. something else. And I think that's where they seem to have got Andrew. But so
yeah, no, and they're easy scapegoats, I suppose, in those situations. And
exactly. Oh, that's a much pithier way of saying what I was trying to say. Yes.
Yeah, no, well, it's funny because I remember people, Theranos, she ended up in jail, and while WeWork was much bigger, and people would ask, well, why? And the answer is, WeWork, they didn't hide anything. They told you what they were going to do.
Yeah.
It just was a nonsense. So, that's kind of usually the line, isn't it? Which is what you're describing with Andrew Left.
Well, WeWork had Massa at SoftBank just handing him gigantic gobs of cash.
Based on, 5-minute conversation. And SoftBank, we never even touched on that, but was a part of this story as well. They came in at the 11th hour at one point.
Oh, yeah. We can't get caught up in those details now. That's
no, that's gone. That's gone.
But we should talk about, like, SpaceX is mad.
Yeah, well,
it's a loss-making company, valued on 90 times
110 times sales. It's oversubscribed. We're about to get a price in a few minutes. I wrote a piece
it's been dropped from retail. It is really. I've predicted 20 of the last 3 recessions. So, I'm inherently bearish, but in terms of a market top signal, like Elon Musk dropping $1 trillion company on retail, which doesn't make any money, is built on absolutely batshit claims about settling Mars. That feels like it's telling us something about the world.
I think you're right. And when the times are like that, when these things are happening, there's more frauds, right? Because it's easier to do, it's easier to hide, you get money easier. So you should be busy for a while anyway.
I think so, yeah.
Great. Well, I'll end it there. Thank you so much, Dan. That's for everyone. If you haven't read it, Money Men, get it. We didn't cover on 60%, 70% of the story. There's so much detail, so much happens. There's also a Netflix documentary, Scandal. So if you don't want to read the book, you can watch that.
It's a great Friday evening viewing.
Yeah. Saturday night, even better, But thanks, Dan, and thank you everyone who joined. And we can all go away now and watch SpaceX and see what happens in the first few minutes.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Brian. Really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everyone.